What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? This is Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and we are here today with another installment of Overthinking MTG. And so we're on the Magic the Gathering, well, Gatherer, the Magic the Gathering database, and I just pressed that random card button, everybody's favorite, and we get Dream Thief. Okay, so this is from Eventide, which, if I'm not mistaken, was in the Lorwyn block. Actually, Lorwyn was the first set to come out after I stopped playing, to give you an idea of times, you know. So I understand for a lot of people, Lorwyn was this thing that was like really, really long ago and just kind of a thing that happened and a piece of the history. But for me, it's actually the beginning of my, yeah, it's the beginning of my rather large blind spot in Magic history. So here we go. Dream Thief. 2-1, or sorry, let's start with mana cost. 2 generic and a blue, so we got a mana cost of 3. Fairy Rogue with flying, as fairies often have. It's a 2-1, so 2-1 for 3. Ugh. And this is a common, so it definitely feels like draft chaff. When Dream Thief comes into play, draw a card if you played another blue spell this turn. Ugh. All right, yeah, no, this is terrible. This is definitely um, yeah, no, this is definitely draft chaff for sure, and definitely not something that I want to get early on in the pack. If I'm looking at like my second or third pick in a pack and I'm seriously considering Dream Thief, I'm probably in rough shape. That said, I don't know the limited environment in Eventide. It may have been very good in that set, but I don't feel like the pieces are there. So it does have flying. So it is 2 power in the air. So that's something. I mean, that's not nothing for sure. A 2-1 flyer for 3 is a little expensive, but in limited, depending on the limited environment, there may be a place for it because flyers are valuable. They are incredibly valuable. That said, it only has 1 toughness. So all removals and all flying blockers, well, almost all flying blockers, can knock this thing out of the game. So, okay, so you don't really have a lot going there. And then its secondary ability, like what you're paying extra for, is the ability to draw an extra card, but only if you played another blue spell. So card draw is valuable. Card draw is good, absolutely. But the thing is, like, let's compare Dream Thief with Cloudkin Seer, which was an elemental that came out in M20. It was it cost 2 generic and a blue for a 2-1 flyer, and when it came into play, you drew a card. Exact same thing, and that is great in limited. It's just so much better, like inarguably better. You can't. There's no comparison because one of the big values is being able to get that 2-1 body on the field on turn 3. However, in this case with Dream Thief, if you play the thief on turn 3, you're not getting the ability to. You're not drawing a card because you didn't play another blue spell this turn. So it just doesn't work. Um, Yeah, so you need to have at least 4 mana before you can start using this because you're going to get you have to have at least 4 mana and another blue spell. Now, that blue spell, in a lot of cases, is going to be like some kind of control magic that you're going to want to play at instant speed on your opponent's turn. So that doesn't synergize with this at all. Like, get that completely out of here. Like, if I'm sitting on a counter spell, you know, I need to hope that my opponent tries to play something during my main phase or during combat so that I can counter it, and then in the post-combat main phase, play Dream Thief and draw that card. I mean, that's a lot of hoops to jump through just to draw a single card. Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine a situation where that's going to be worth it. I mean, it's going to be limited if anything, if anything. But I would be shocked. That said, it's a common, you know. So draft chaff, it is what it is. I have no doubt there are bulk bins at your local game store that have a few copies of Dream Thief in them. Yeah, guaranteed. Just because it's, I mean, unless they are really good at liquidating their bulk, in which case, well, maybe not. Yeah, because this is bulk for sure. All right, so let's see. There are a couple of rulings. Let's take a look at that, and then we can dive into the flavor of this thing because we might find something fun there. All right, so rulings. Dreamsleeve doesn't check whether you've cast another blue spell until it's entered the battlefield ability resolve. So if Dream Thieves enter the battlefield ability triggers, then you cast a blue instant spell in response, you'll get the bonus. Oh, cool. All right, so one way you could do that is on turn 3, play Dream Thief, and then as that ability is on the stack, hit it with Unsummon, bring it back up to your hand. You've now cast another blue spell, draw a card, then you have the Dream Thief loaded, ready to go again. So again, you're still looking at. So in that case, what you've done is you've added, you've effectively added a kicker to Unsummon, or you've turned Unsummon in instead of pay 1, return a creature to its owner's hand, you end up, the net result is spend 4 mana, discard Unsummon, and draw a card. Like, so you've ended up with a really crappy divination. Um, yeah, still not worth it. No, if I'm paying 4 to draw a card, I need to make sure that it's not some kind of Gumby 2-card combo. There's got to be better ways to use this. Um, anyway, so that's ruling number 1. Ruling number 2, and these are both from August of 2008. Although Dream Thief says it looks for another blue spell, there's no requirement that Dream Thief actually be cast as a spell or be blue for this part of its ability to work. For example, if a spell such as Zombify puts Dream Thief directly onto the battlefield, its ability will still check whether you've cast a blue spell this turn, even though you didn't cast Dream Thief itself as a spell. Right, that makes good sense. So as long as you've played, so actually that works with things like Zombify. That would also work with cards like Soul Foundry or Mimic Vat, where you're producing tokens that are copies of something. So if you had Dream Thief on a Mimic Vat, for example, when you imprint something onto a Mimic Vat, what you can do as creatures die, you could then pay 3, tap that, and tap the Mimic Vat, that is, and create a token that is a copy of the creature that was imprinted. So imprinting a Dream Thief on there, all right, there's an opportunity to potentially get something going there, because on a turn when you have 5 mana available, if you counter something of your opponents or if you bounce something of your opponents, you can then at instant speed hit a Mimic Vat or a Soul Foundry and create a token copy of Dream Thief and draw a card. And so then you've got a 2/1 flying blocker down, potentially during their turn, and you draw an extra card. So, you know, there are worse situations. I mean, that's not the greatest value engine, but one of those things, if in a situation in like EDH where something like that matters, man, there might be a place for this. The other thing that I think of is actually my Eureka deck. 'Cause I do have a deck based around Eureka, the Tiger Shadow, and it's all about small, evasive blue and black creatures that I can use as a springboard to get ninjas onto the battlefield. It's the whole idea. And so I see something like this and see, well, a small blue creature with an enter the battlefield ability with evasion. So it has flying. When it comes into play, I get to draw extra cards potentially. And um, yeah, so I mean, I guess those are the two big things. But that mana cost of 3 is really off-putting. That really makes me second guess the value of something like this. Well, I mean, not really second guess it. I don't believe it's quite worth the mana cost. If this cost 2, then it would be good. If this cost 2, it would be damn good in draft. It'd be damn good in draft, and there would be some fringe cases where it might be worthwhile and constructed. Probably wouldn't be common material then. That would probably be uncommon. Um, but yeah, with that ability, I mean, that's the thing. It is amazing how small tweaks can so dramatically change a card. So here we have a 2/1 flyer for 3 with the ability to draw a single card in a situation where you cast another blue spell. You make this thing cost 2, and all of a sudden it bumps up from a common draft shaft unplayable meh to like an uncommon decent consideration. Like immediately 2/1 flyer for 2, I'm not dismissing it out of hand. It's a fairy, so any kind of tribal synergies there. It's also a rogue, which you can use with things today anyway, like what is it, Robber of the Rich. That cares if rogues have attacked in any given turn. All right, so all of a sudden, fairy rogue. You got some synergies there. Okay, cool. So yeah, you make it 2. All of a sudden, that thing is playable. It's rock solid, not bad. You make that thing cost 1, even if you make it a 1/1. Actually, no, you make that thing a 2/1, like, take it exactly as it stands, shave another mana off that, make that thing cost 1 blue, and all of a sudden you're in, like, mythic rare territory where certain decks like Storm would just play like four of these. Like it'd be silly not to, in my opinion. I mean, I know people who play Storm that may tell me why that's off, but if you think about it, if you're in a deck where you're playing a lot of spells and a lot of blue spells, being able to just play one, throw it down, draw a card, like that sounds like exactly the kind of stuff you want. And then you also have a 2/1 flying body on into the mix as well, just cause. You know, and it doesn't cost one. This thing costs three, and as a result, it's like borderline unplayable. Um, yeah, it's funny how that works, right? And so that was just kind of a thought experiment because that's the how much. I mean, one mana is worth a lot, and two mana is worth a ton, especially on something like this. All right, so flavorfully, let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit and take a look at. So here we have a Lorwyn fairy, which means she's got some animalistic features. She seems to have horns or antenna coming out of her head. Um, they have a she has the cricket legs that the Lorwyn fairies seem to have. She also seems to have some kind of they're either bracers made of what look like feathers or hairs, or she has some kind of feathers or hairs growing out of her arms, but just between the elbow and the wrist. So that's kind of interesting. All right, and then yeah. So the flavor text. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a fairy. She is flying clearly at a really fast clip. There's a really good sense of speed in this image. The her hair is billowing back, and there's a lot of the background seems to be blurring as we're following this fairy, and then she's also holding a large blue ball of energy, so it's not really clear exactly what's going on there, although it looks to me like, given the name of this card, I would imagine that what has just happened is this fairy has literally stolen a dream, so stolen a thought out of someone's head, potentially while they were asleep, and is now fleeing the scene. That's the vibe I'm getting out of this. So this thing that she's holding is some kind of thought, some kind of dream, something out of somebody's head. It's actually something. It's a piece of someone's mind that was magically extracted, and now this fairy is flying away as fast as she can. Um, that's pretty darn cool. And so the flavor text is Awila's salvaged dreams would finally be put to good use. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what use that is. And when they say salvaged dreams, I can't help but wonder, what does that mean? I mean, are these the dreams that never reach sleepers? I mean, are these the dreams that get caught in things like dream catchers? Um, or are these salvaged dreams, dreams that people have had that they brought into existence, but have forgotten. Because I know that's one thing. Our minds are very active, and my understanding is the current belief is that we dream constantly, or that we dream often, like far more than we remember, and we just remember a small fraction of the number of dreams that actually occur while we're asleep. And so I wonder if maybe this is speaking to that. Maybe all of those dreams that get forgotten upon daybreak. Maybe that's what this fairy is grabbing. So we do have a little bit of confusion for me anyway, because we have in the title she's a thief, but in the flavor text there the dreams are salvaged. So okay, actually no, now that I say that out loud, I'm realizing maybe that's not as much of a maybe that's not as much of a distance as I thought. So, one thing that I know, a lot of thieves and a lot of criminals in general, and frankly, anyone who's made a questionable moral decision, and I can be honest about the fact that I'm not immune to this, and I suspect, not to pass judgment on anybody, but I would be really surprised if anyone listening to this does not have that moment when they've done something that they regret, and or something that they know isn't right, whether they regret it or not, and they justify it by putting some other label on it, some other spin. you know um I'm not stealing this, I'm just borrowing it. There's actually there's a series of novels that I'm a big fan of by Brandon Sanderson called the Mistborn series. If you haven't checked that out, I'd highly recommend it. They are not a sponsor of this episode. I just think they're great and it deserves your time if you like high fantasy. And there's one character who has this kind of quirk, and this isn't spoiling anything. It's just kind of this funny thing that he does where he steals stuff all the time. But if you hear him talk about it, he doesn't steal anything ever. It's always a trade. He always so like at one point I think he trades somebody's like mantle clock for an apple core. Like he always leaves something behind when he takes something. And so it's like no, for him he's like no, I traded him for it. Like no, I traded him for it. That crumpled up piece of paper is totally worth this, solid gold pocket watch or whatever. So like yeah, he's stealing, but he's got this justification for it. And so maybe we're dealing with something like that here, where this dream thief is in fact straight up stealing these right out of people's heads. But she's like, well, they're gonna forget him anyway. These aren't really the good dreams. I'm salvaging these. I'm giving them a purpose. Because I mean they didn't need them. It's cool, like right. It might be something like that. Anyway, so this has actually been pretty fun. This is an interesting. This card's not great. It's not good. Like I said, you can probably, if your local game store has a bulk commons bin where things are like 5 cents a piece, this is probably in there. Um, yeah, because it's not really good. But the flavor text, the creative team told a cool story here. We have an interesting character in Awila. And actually, and now I'm curious if Awila was I'm not familiar. Again, this was part of the blind spot in my history. I'm not sure who Awila was, if that was a named character in Lorwyn, if that was a meaningful fairy at the time, but I definitely want to check that out. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun, guys. And plugs. I stream over on Twitch, twitch.tv/hamhocks42. This podcast, Overthinking MTG, is available on YouTube as well as your favorite podcasting app. So thank you so much for checking it out wherever you are. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind actually hitting that subscribe button, the follow button, the like button, whatever feedback mechanism there is on your application of choice, and just tell a friend, because if you're having fun, I would love for other folks to have fun as well. It means a lot. Thanks so much for coming out, and I will catch you next time.